Title: The Fire Across the Sea. Historical fiction, Spanish-American War, 1898. Prologue: The spark in Havana. The warm evening breeze carried the scent of salt and gunpowder as the USS Maine floated quietly in Havana Harbor. Below deck, Lieutenant Daniel Carter sat at his writing desk, penning a letter to his sister back in New York. Dearest Emily, the tension here is suffocating. The Spanish do not trust us, and truth be told, I do not trust them. There are whispers of war in every tavern, every back alley. If conflict breaks out, I fear this ship will be the first casualty. Before he could finish, an earth-shattering explosion ripped through the hull. Fire and debris filled the air. Daniel was thrown against the bulkhead as screams echoed through the burning wreckage. As water rushed in, his last thoughts were of home. War had begun. Chapter 1: A Nation Aroused. New York City buzzed with rage and excitement. The explosion of the Maine had ignited a firestorm. Headlines screamed for vengeance. Remember the Maine? To hell with Spain. Among the bustling streets, young journalist Samuel Whitmore rushed through the doors of the New York Journal. He had been waiting for this moment, the story that would make his career. Sam, get to Washington. War's coming, and we need the inside scoop, his editor barked. Samuel grabbed his notebook. The world was about to change, and he would be there to write it. Chapter 2: Blood on the Shores of Cuba. The tropical heat was suffocating as Private Jack Callahan and his fellow Rough Riders stormed the beaches of Cuba. Led by the fiery Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, they charged through Spanish gunfire, bullets whizzing past their heads. Jack clenched his rifle, fear and adrenaline surging through him. This was not the adventure he had imagined when he enlisted. The reality of war was brutal, and the beaches of Santiago were painted red with the blood of friend and foe alike. Roosevelt roared, "Forward! For the Republic!" And forward they went into the fire. Chapter 3: The Spy in Manila. Across the Pacific, in the bustling streets of Manila, Isabella Reyes moved through the crowded marketplace with purpose. A Filipino revolutionary, she had been tasked with delivering intelligence to the Americans. She paused as Spanish soldiers patrolled nearby. If they caught her, it would mean certain death. The people of the Philippines had suffered under Spanish rule for centuries, and now, as the Americans approached, the question remained: were they saviors, or merely another empire? She had no choice but to trust them for now. Chapter 4: The Battle of San Juan Hill. The dawn sun cast a golden glow over the hills of Santiago. Jack Callahan adjusted his rifle strap, sweat dripping down his brow. The order came, and the Rough Riders charged up the rugged hill, Spanish bullets cutting down men beside him. A cannon blast shook the ground. Roosevelt led from the front, his voice booming over the chaos. Jack reached the summit just as the American flag was raised. Victory was theirs, but at what cost? Chapter 5: Secrets in the Palace. Inside the Spanish governor's palace in Manila, Isabella hid behind a tapestry as two officers spoke in hushed voices. "The Americans will come soon," one whispered. "If we cannot hold the city, we must strike a bargain." She clenched her fists. The revolution was supposed to free the Philippines, not hand them to another master. As the officers left, she made her decision. She would warn the revolutionaries. Chapter 6: The Siege of Santiago. The city burned as the Spanish forces retreated. Jack watched as Cuban rebels stormed the streets, fighting alongside the Americans. The war was nearing its end, but the future remained uncertain. He met Samuel Whitmore, who had arrived to cover the final days of the war. "This war is bigger than just Cuba," the journalist said. "The whole world is watching." Chapter 7: A Reckoning in Manila. As the Americans prepared to take Manila, Isabella stood with her fellow revolutionaries. Would the U.S. honor their promise of independence, or had they fought only to trade one empire for another? Gunfire erupted at the city's edge. The final battle had begun. Chapter 8: The End of Empire. The Spanish formally surrendered in Cuba and the Philippines, marking the dawn of a new era. Jack and Samuel stood amid the ruins, wondering what would come next. Isabella, watching from the shadows, knew the real fight for freedom was just beginning. Epilogue: The Price of War. Months later, Samuel penned his final article on the war. The U.S. had claimed victory, but echoes of betrayal and resistance remained. Jack returned home a hero, but his dreams were haunted by the men he had killed. And Isabella, now hunted by both Spanish loyalists and Americans, disappeared into the mountains to continue the fight. History had been written, but the true cost of war would be felt for generations. The end.